Hey everybody, welcome to Small Group. Today we're going to be talking about how you can become a person of mercy as we learn to copy the model of mercy. I want to mix it up today as we talk about mercy. Sunday we talked about the meaning of mercy, but today we're going to look at the model of mercy, Jesus Christ. And just to review really quick, Sunday we said that the meaning of mercy was this: to give care to the afflicted, to give help to the needy, to forgive those who wrong us, to rescue the miserable and marginalized, and to look out for the left out. This is how we defined the meaning of mercy, and I just wanted to review that so that we could have a correct concept of what God is teaching us when it comes to mercy. Because he says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." So today we're just going to dig deep down into the scriptures and be able to look at the master of mercy himself so that we can copy his model, because you look at the life of Jesus Christ and you don't have to look far. I mean, the fabric of who he was, his being, he was just a merciful God. Everywhere he went, he was being kind and compassionate to people. Mercy is the material Jesus is made of. And so some examples that we want to look at start in Matthew chapter 9, and you'll have time to look at these passages together in the small group. But in Matthew chapter 9, verses 27 and 28, we see that Jesus was merciful to two blind men. And it says, and as Jesus passed on from there, two blind men followed him, crying aloud. And this is what they said: "Have mercy on us." And they were asking for mercy. And in verse 28, it says, when he entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" And they said to him, "Yes, Lord." And he healed them of their blindness. I love the fact that Jesus deviated from his path to turn to a hurting person, actually two blind men. Not only did he turn to them, he went into their house, or whatever house they were in. And I'm thinking a lot of us would have a hard time being so merciful that we would stop what we're doing and go into a stranger's house to help them. Jesus is the master of mercy, and here we see him being merciful to two blind men. And it reminds me of maybe some kids that are at a baseball game, maybe a Major League Baseball game, and they're calling over to the players for autographs. Maybe you've been in this situation before the game starts, around the dugout. And the players, a lot of times, they're trying to stay focused, but sometimes they just can't help it. They have to come over there and sign some autographs. And this is how it was with Jesus and the two blind men. They were calling out. They didn't really deserve the help, but Jesus turned to them and gave them the mercy that they were asking for, and he healed them. And what a difference it made in their lives. What a difference we can make in people's lives if we just stop what we're doing and show some kindness, show some love and compassion. Jesus was merciful to these two blind men, and it really helps us to understand what mercy is all about. Jesus was also merciful to the multitudes. In Matthew chapter 9, once again, if you'll look with me in verse 36, it says, when he saw the crowds, the multitudes, he had compassion for them. Same word, he had mercy for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Here are these people that have been marginalized. They're just harassed and helpless, the Bible says. That terminology is the same terminology that would be used to describe soldiers who have been wounded or killed on a battlefield. And you would look out across this battlefield and people were there's just carnage. And that's the way it is with life. People are hurting and helpless. They need a shepherd for their soul. They need someone to act like Jesus in their lives and to show them mercy. And as we look out across the battlefield of life, there's so many hurting people, and we can see Jesus stopping what he's doing, having mercy. And not only did he look and have this feeling, mercy is not just a pained feeling at the sight of suffering, but it's much more than that. Mercy takes action, and that's what Jesus did by healing so many of them. It goes on to say another example of this in Matthew chapter 15 and verse 32. Matthew 15:32, we find out that Jesus helps hungry people and meets their physical need for food. Matthew chapter 15, verse 32, then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on the crowd, I have mercy on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat, and I'm unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. Basically, they'd been with Jesus so long, their food supplies ran out, and Jesus looked out and he said, man, it's time to send them home, and I just have mercy on them because it's a long way for them to walk, and I want to give them some help. I want to give them some food. I love the fact that as we continue to look at Jesus's life, we're really seeing how merciful he is. And so let's continue to talk about this mercy. And remember this as we continue. Mercy is not just a pained feeling at the sight of suffering. It's the action that you take to do something to alleviate the pain of the other person, like give them food in this case. So Jesus was merciful to blind men. He was merciful to the multitudes. Jesus was merciful to a mother in Matthew chapter 15 again in verse 22. So again, here we are in the same chapter. We're still in the same book of Matthew, and we're seeing multiple accounts of mercy from Jesus. Matthew chapter 15 verse 22 says, and behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. And so here, this lady, she's crying out. I mean, literally crying out and asking for help, asking for mercy. And she's not even a Jew. She is a Canaanite. You could say that they were enemies of the Jews. They were looked down on as pagan people by most of the Jews. And Jesus even says in verse 24, he answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But she came and knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. And he's like, God, help me anyway. And he had so much love and compassion in his heart. He's like, yeah, you know what? I can deviate from what I'm originally thinking because I'm all about helping you in your time of need. What a great God. And it says, and he answered, it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But she said, yes, Lord, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And she says, like, hey, I'm begging here. I'm begging for mercy. Like a dog that's begging. We have a little crumb snatcher at our house called Chase. And a lot of times he'll sit down right beside me at the dinner table because he knows that if he sits there long enough and gives me that puppy dog look and maybe whimpers a little bit, I'm going to give him a special treat. And that's what this lady was asking for. Let me just say, God is a God who responds to our requests. And when we beg for mercy, when we ask God for mercy, he's the type of God that is personal enough to feel our pain and then to help us with it in a practical way. So Jesus was merciful to this mother. He ends up healing her daughter and helping her out, even though they didn't deserve it. And I'm so glad that that's part of mercy, when God doesn't give us what we deserve, but he gives us what we don't deserve, and he blesses us. Jesus was merciful to this mother. Jesus was also merciful to a maniac. He's a demon-possessed dude that no one could do anything with. He's the marginalized, the ostracized, the person that no one wanted anything to do with. And we find his story in Mark chapter 5. I love this. Mark chapter 5, it says that, and when Jesus stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. And he lived among the tombs. This was a freak, just a weird zombie-like dude, demon-possessed. No one wanted anything to do with him. It says, they tried to bind him, and not even with a chain they couldn't even chain him up. He was just this super strong dude possessed by demons. He would break the chains, but he had been shackled for so long with this demon possession. And it says, for he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart. He broke the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. And he's this man that's just this maniac that Jesus says, you know what, I'm going to take time for this guy that's been in a miserable state. And maybe you can think of someone that's going through a hard time. They're miserable. Maybe they've been suffering for years and no one has been able to help them. Why don't we be messengers of mercy and take the mercy to them that God has shared with us. It goes on to say in verse 19, I just love this fabric, the material of mercy that we're digging into, because it gives us nuances of what God's mercy is all about. Verse 19 says, and he did not permit him, but said to him, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you. Now, this is the idea. After Jesus set this man free from all his vices, he was able then to hear this man say to him, he said, hey, I want to go with you. I want to join the Jesus team and follow you around with your disciples. And Jesus says, no, your job is here. I want you to go to your people and tell them. And he says this, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. Jesus said, I've been merciful to you. Now you go and do something to help others. And that is exactly what we do as recipients of mercy. We're able to then give mercy. Not only do we receive mercy, we reciprocate mercy and we give it to other people. And he was able to do that. And everybody, it says, I love this. If you look in verse 20, it says, and everyone marveled. Everyone's like, whoa. And you know what? If you're merciful to somebody, it's going to start something that's going to cause other people to take note and even marvel, like, wow, this is amazing. So Jesus was merciful to the maniac, and Jesus was even merciful to mean people, people that were mean to him. In Luke 23, the crucifiers, the crowd, even that criminal who was dissing on Jesus, disrespecting him, he was still merciful when he said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And Jesus was merciful to someone that was messed up. And this is one of my favorite stories about Jesus, and it's found in John chapter 8. In John chapter 8, early in the morning, it says in verse 2, he came to the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. Notice, this is early in the morning, so they probably were trying to trap Jesus in this way, and they wanted to bring this woman before Jesus. So they caught her in the very act of adultery early in the morning, it says. And so early in the morning, they probably were there at the house where she had been committing adultery with somebody, and to humiliate her and to make her a spectacle and to shame her, they brought her before Jesus and said, the Old Testament law says she should be stoned. And Jesus says, no. He says, let him, I love this, verse 7, let him who is without sin among you be the first one to cast the first stone. And no one did. They're like, okay, we get it. We're all sinners, and we have no right to throw a stone at this person because we've done wrong ourselves. And Jesus told her in verse 10, Jesus stood up and said to her, woman, where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you? And she said, no one, Lord. And Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. Go now, go from here and sin no more. And this reminds me of just how merciful Jesus is with me and you when we mess up. This lady had really messed up, done wrong, and Jesus was still very merciful to her. Jesus didn't come to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. And I'm so glad that Jesus was merciful to someone who messed up, and may we copy his example as when we see people in our lives messing up and breaking our hearts, doing things over and over again that we feel like they should stop, and we get hurt by them, we should still be merciful to them and forgive them, not condemn them, but forgive them with mercy, like the model of mercy, like the master of mercy. May God help us to be merciful. Because you know what? Not only was he merciful to the mom and the blind men, the multitudes, the maniac, the mean people, and here this one that had messed up, Jesus has been merciful to me. And I need to be like Jesus and show mercy to others as well. So let's go out and be merciful to others in our lives, even though they may not deserve it in our minds. Let's be merciful like Jesus has been merciful to us. Thank you so much for joining in to this small group, and we can't wait to see you back Sunday. Bring someone with you, and I'll see you Sunday.